G'day everyone and welcome back to the Cyber Minutes podcast. My name is Max and today I'm joined by Flynn as always. And we have some topics today to go through, namely the IPv6 vulnerability, which has been going around a little bit. And so we'll go into a little bit of depth on that one, and Toyota's data breach. So they had a data breach of customer and employee data. Not so good from them, but let's kick it off with this IPv6 vulnerability. So what do we know about this, Flynn?
Yeah, so basically, Microsoft's Patch Tuesday, I believe it's called, came around and there was a couple of massive security flaws that were patched in it. The biggest one being this vulnerability, so it's IPv6. So for the viewers listening, there's basically every vulnerability gets a CVSS score, or every known vulnerability, which is basically ranking from 1 to 10. Yeah, ranking from 1 to 10 how bad it is. Like an example of me and Max were talking before, if you've been around for the Log4j, which was probably the worst vulnerability in recent memory, that was a 10. This one is a 9.8. So basically as bad as it gets, as far as I'm aware. Max, you said that it is a 9.8 just because it hasn't been witnessed being exploited in the wild yet. The reason why it is so high is basically if you were to exploit this, you have absolutely everything. So it is a wormable remote code execution that requires no click, which is basically you take over the entire network straight away.
Yeah, you don't need to do anything. You don't need the user to click anything or do anything. If you're on the network, then you can pretty much do as you please. Now, just for those who aren't familiar, IPv6. So when we're talking about this, all we're talking about is it's like a number that your computer is assigned on the network. Now, IPv4 is probably what most people are familiar with. When people are talking about what's your IP address, what they're talking about is IPv4. So it's a number that your computer is assigned, and that's like the alias that it communicates via. Now, IPv6 is slightly different. It has some more complexity added to it. It's not just numbers. There's some other stuff in it as well to give it its designated, identity. And yeah, so this one, it's a bit kind of hard to look at because no one's exploited it. Microsoft has patched this vulnerability in their latest update, so you might want to update your PC if you haven't done that in a little while. But yeah, like Flynn said, the reason it's not a 10 is because in the wild, no one's been able to actually do this and complete it on a machine, this type of attack. So it's not a cyber attack in a sense. It's just an issue with the system that could potentially be exploited. So it's like precautionary, but yeah, not too good. So wormable remote code execution. Now, what we've been told is that if you're able to send IPv6 packets, which just means basically connection packets, to a vulnerable machine, you can take over that machine, install malware, ransomware, whatever you want, backdoors, everything, just from being on the same local network. So if say someone joins your Wi-Fi router, they could pretty much just take over all your computers on that entire network. So yeah, a bit of a rough one there for Microsoft, but good to have it patched.
It's not uncommon for vulnerabilities to come out that haven't necessarily been seen to be exploited. There's security researchers out there that's basically their entire job. They just look to find vulnerabilities in something, and even though there might be something there, it's not really practical to exploit. Yep. One good way to sort of verify that is there's a list called the KEV list, which is the known exploitable vulnerabilities, which basically just takes CVEs and CVSS and whatnot and puts it into ones that they've actually seen happening in the wild. Yeah. So if someone wants to check that out, that's also a good read.
So the example here is this would not be on, that wouldn't be delegated as something that's exploitable in that list.
Yeah.
Now, moving on, we've seen a data breach from Toyota. Now, I'm sure everyone knows who Toyota is. They created the Supra and the Hilux, two of the coolest, most interesting sort of cars of all time, but I won't dive too much into that. Yeah, so they've suffered a data breach with, was it 240 gigabytes of records?
Yeah, 240 gigabytes of customer and employee. Still a lot of information to come out about it. It's very, very unfolding. But they have notified of the amount that's been taken. Not any specifics about PII, but we know that a data breach has occurred.
Yeah, cool. And they haven't said what happened just of yet, but it could have been a whole bunch of things. There's a lot of companies at the moment that are just having like issues with cyber attacks.
Yeah. So for perspective, Toyota basically said that they're aware like certain claims are true, but they haven't really been providing details. One quote was, "We are aware of the situation. The issue is limited in scope and it's not a system-wide issue. And we've engaged those who are impacted and provide assistance if needed," which is a pretty base standard response, really.
Yeah, so what that probably means is if you're being affected, you're probably going to get an email from Toyota just letting you know that your data's on the internet.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, so another thing, I was scrolling through LinkedIn the other day. I saw, we've spoken in the past about a lot of different exploitations of young teens in an explicit manner. That is a fairly sensitive episode, so it's an important one. So if anybody wants to go look at it, have a look. But fair warning, Snapchat and Instagram basically are the two main perpetrators for criminal groups, which they're called the Yahoo Boys, which I don't think we actually mentioned in the episode itself. Basically, the Snapchat CEO has actually come out and said something about it, and that they're trying to put in a lot more different measures in place to actually stop it from happening. It's hard to say what if much of it is going to work. Some people seem pretty positive on it, but the big three that I've seen is that they're doing robust device blocking. Robust could really mean anything though, so we'll see. Disclosing to users when they're friended by an account recently reported / blocked by others. I kind of would have thought that'd be a thing already, but regardless, I suppose it's good to see it coming into place. And also preventing suspicious friend requests from elevated risk geographies. I do think that's a good control to have in place, but also, again, I would have liked to see that in place originally.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where if an IP of a user is mainly coming from Nigeria or, somewhere in West Africa or, anywhere around there where these attackers are commonly from, and that's coming from the CEO of Snapchat. That's not from my opinion. That's just what they've said. Then there should be some, geo-blocking happening already. Maybe they just need to look at if you're a user in Europe, then you probably shouldn't be allowed to get accepted from people in China, or if you're a user in Japan, maybe you shouldn't be able to accept users from, Venezuela, somewhere from the other side of the world. So that kind of IP-based blocking, I feel like that probably should have already been in place, but it's a good move. Yeah, disclosing users when they're friended by an account recently reported, exactly like you said, probably should have already been a thing. And device blocking, so it's probably just checking if the operating system of the device is coming from a, really sketchy
unknown
type of
thing. Yeah,
or a Linux machine rather than an iOS or typical Android OS. So that's some good measures put in place there, but it comes down at the end of the day to education. We need to really hammer down on making sure that children aren't even tempted to send these type of pictures to people in general. Really, I would say people they don't know, but they shouldn't be sending them in general, because nothing really good's going to come of it, especially in this day and age where there's so much sharing and people might get pissed off at one another and then share it anyway. It's just a thing where children shouldn't be accepting people or that they don't know, or especially not sending them things about themselves.
Yeah, another big problem especially with Snapchat is, I don't know if anybody's used Snapchat in the audience, but basically a big problem with how it's set up is it's supposed to be like a live thing. So you send somebody something and it's a photo of themselves, a video or whatever, and then that goes away and it's not there anymore. So it has this feel that it's very live, like it's happening right there, right then. But the problem is with the criminals is that they're just taking, some model or whatever, or just some random person online, and they're, putting the video onto the app. So it makes it look like it's a live photo of the person, but it's not. So as you said, having that education of, you could not be talking to someone you're thinking you are. And then, as you said, just kind of, having good hygiene in place to begin with and not sending stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for listening. Just a reminder that the Cyber Minutes podcast is for educational purposes only. The views expressed by hosts and guests are their own, not necessarily their employers. Advice discussed is general advice. We promote ethical discussions, not illegal activities. Have a cybersecurity question? Send an email to cyberminutespodcast@gmail.com, as we'd love to answer it. Stay cyber safe.